What gets you angry? I remember when I was teaching in Chicago, before I joined the Norbertines. I lived on the north side, and I drove down to work on the south side. Particularly in the afternoons, I found myself getting frustrated by traffic. Beautiful Lakeshore Drive snakes from where I worked up to where I lived. I have a vivid memory of one day turning off onto Irving Park and slamming the wheel because I was angry at the person that had cut me off. And suddenly I remembered, or not remembered, but I was kind of taken aback from myself and said, why are you so angry? Is getting home 30 seconds earlier really worth being this angry for? Is cursing and yelling and maybe telling somebody they're number one really what you are all about? Is this worth so much anger? Since that moment, that's been over 10 years ago now, on the corner of Irving Park and Lakeshore Drive, I still get annoyed in traffic. But something registered in me was, what is the point? What's the point of bringing up this story, of bringing up anger? On this third Sunday of Lent, we will be surprised again that we hear of Jesus' anger as he overturns tables, as he drives the sellers out of the temple. And then we hear a quote from the Old Testament. Zeal for his house consumed him. I often have people come into my office and talk to me about feeling guilty for being angry. And I encourage them not to, because there are times that I think this Sunday's gospel shows us that even Christ, human and divine, was angry. And why was he angry? Because he was so inflamed, the zeal within him for God and neighbor and for this sacred space. So anger in and of itself is not a bad thing. Sadness, anger, some of these emotions that we have determined are bad emotions, in and of themselves are not bad. Christ reminds us that this Sunday. Now, let's think about some of the things that do make us angry. Some of the things that I can say in my heart anger me every time I come across them. Should we get angry that too many of our children in their schools are gunned down? Should we be angry about that? Should that cause us to respond, not with anger against those who perpetrate these crimes, but shouldn't that anger drive us to action, to reach out to our senators, to reach out to our young people, to address those that are so hurting, but also to reach out to our senators to ask for change, reach out to our school leaders and encourage them in their day in and day out? Should we be angered over the violence that goes on in our homes, in our streets, in our communities? People are gunned down on the streets of Chicago every single day. Men and women are abused in the household every single day. Why do I bring these things up? Because these things should justify the anger that erupts within us. Do we then lash out against those who are perpetrators of violence? No. We channel that anger into making change within the Christian community. Jesus reminds us today that there are justifiable times to be angry and even to make a display of our anger. But each and every time we make a display of that anger, it cannot be aimed at hurting anybody else, particularly those that are already immersed in a cycle of violence, particularly those that are already hurting others. Let our anger, whatever is angering you, and I only gave a couple examples, each and every one of you has a particular issue that drives you to anger. If it's traffic, if it's not getting your Starbucks in time, probably not an issue to justify your anger. Is it something related to a respect for human life and dignity? Then absolutely. This is what zeal we should have. Zeal for when we recognize the dignity of our sisters and brothers is being violated. If we're consumed with zeal for our brothers and sisters, we too should act out of our anger and work for peace, work for justice, work for solutions where we come to the table and talk with one another. So as we move toward this third Sunday of Lent, let us consider, what do we have zeal for, and what are we willing to fight for? May we follow Christ in letting our anger be justified and working for justice.